Black Hollow Lake was once a place where families gathered for summer picnics, and teenagers dared each other to swim across the murky waters at night. But everything changed after Thomas Avery's death. Locals still remembered the whispered accusations. That Melissa had been having an affair, that Brian was involved, that Thomas's accidental drowning was far from accidental. Detective Erica Monroe, assigned to the current double homicide case, was just starting out when Thomas died. Now seasoned and known for her attention to detail, she couldn't shake the feeling that these new murders were not random. The way Melissa's body was found, beaten, tied, and dumped in a drainage ditch, and the brutal stabbing of Brian inside his home suggested rage, personal rage. Whoever did this wanted them to suffer. Old case files were pulled. Interviews with surviving family members began. Quiet doors reopened. Erica quickly realized that in the 10 years since Thomas's death, resentment had only deepened beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful town. People had moved on with their lives, but grudges, she knew, had a way of festering unseen. A chilling thought took root. Someone had waited a decade to make Melissa and Brian pay. Detective Monroe stood over the evidence board in the small, dimly lit conference room at the Larchwood Police Department. Newspaper clippings of Thomas's drowning, photos of Melissa's battered body at the drainage ditch, and crime scene shots from Brian's blood-smeared living room all stared back at her. The connections weren't subtle. They screamed history. First on Erica's list was Daniel Avery, Thomas's older brother. Daniel had never hidden his suspicion that Melissa and Brian were responsible for Thomas's death. At the time, he had pleaded with police to investigate them more aggressively. But there had been no evidence, no witnesses, no confession. Just Thomas's body pulled from the cold, black water, his lungs filled with it. Erica drove to Daniel's small auto repair shop on the edge of town. The place was nearly abandoned, with a "for sale" sign crookedly leaning in the window. Inside, Daniel was hunched over a rusted engine, his hands stained with grease. Time had hardened him. There was bitterness in the set of his jaw, the stiff way he moved. When Erica brought up Melissa and Brian's murders, Daniel didn't bother to feign surprise. "Good," he muttered, wiping his hands on a rag. "Maybe now they'll get what they deserved." Erica watched him carefully. His anger was real, but was it the anger of a man finally seeing justice? Or the anger of a man who had waited and finally taken matters into his own hands? Daniel claimed he had nothing to do with their deaths. His alibi for the night of Melissa's murder was shaky. He said he was home alone, drinking. No one could confirm it. Still, Erica wasn't convinced yet. 10 years was a long time to wait for vengeance. She needed more. Later that day, Erica visited Marcia Avery, Thomas's mother. Now living in a modest senior complex, Marcia had aged dramatically since Thomas's death. She sat in her small living room, surrounded by photos of Thomas, none of Melissa or Brian. "They took him from me," Marcia whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of grief and fury. "Everyone knew. Everyone. And nobody did a damn thing." Erica asked if Marcia believed someone had finally avenged Thomas. Marcia didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked Erica straight in the eye and said, "Some debts don't get forgiven. They get collected." Erica left the visit uneasy. Was Marcia hinting at something, or simply expressing the raw bitterness that had poisoned her for a decade? Meanwhile, forensic results started trickling in. DNA samples collected from under Melissa's fingernails didn't match Daniel Avery, or any known sample in their local system. The murders, it seemed, were not as straightforward as simple family revenge. Someone else was involved, someone not even on Erica's radar yet. The discovery of the unidentified DNA sent a ripple through Erica's focus. She knew that if this case involved someone outside the tight circle of the Avery family, her investigation needed to widen, and fast. Working late into the night, Erica combed through Thomas Avery's old case file again, cross-referencing anyone who might have had lingering ties to Thomas, Melissa, or Brian. A name that caught her attention was Caleb Rowe, a former friend of Thomas's, mentioned in passing during interviews a decade ago. Caleb had abruptly moved away 6 months after Thomas's death, citing personal reasons. At the time, nobody thought much of it. Curious, Erica pulled Caleb's old address records and learned he had recently moved back to a nearby town, barely 40 miles away. He worked construction, a solitary nomadic job with few attachments. His sudden return coincided suspiciously with the timeline of the murders. The next morning, Erica and her partner, Officer Devin Price, drove to Caleb's modest rental home. Caleb, a wiry man in his late 30s with deep-set, guarded eyes, seemed surprised to see them. He agreed to answer questions but kept his arms crossed the entire time, his body language defensive. When asked about his relationship with Thomas, Caleb's face tightened. "He was my best friend," he said, "until she came along." Melissa, he explained, had always been a point of tension between him and Thomas. Caleb believed Melissa isolated Thomas from his friends, encouraged him to cut ties, and was poison to everyone around her. Caleb admitted he had warned Thomas more than once, warnings Thomas ignored. "After he died, I couldn't stand this place," Caleb said, glancing around as if the walls were closing in. "Had to get out." Erica pressed about where he was the nights Melissa and Brian were killed. Caleb claimed he was working overtime at a site out of town, but when asked for someone who could verify it, he stumbled, eventually admitting he had no solid alibi. Back at the station, Erica ordered a rush comparison of Caleb's DNA against the samples found under Melissa's fingernails. As she waited for results, a call came in from the county coroner's office. They had completed Melissa's autopsy report and found something unusual. Melissa's cause of death wasn't just blunt force trauma. She had inhaled water, dirty, untreated water, before dying. It wasn't a random beating. Someone had tried to drown her before killing her, just like Thomas. The forensic lab's call came mid-morning, a curt but decisive message. Caleb Rowe's DNA did not match the sample recovered from under Melissa Avery's fingernails. Erica sat back in her chair, processing the information. Caleb remained suspicious. His bitterness toward Melissa, his sudden return to the area, and his vague alibi. But scientifically, he wasn't the one who fought with Melissa during her final moments. The investigation had to widen. Erica ordered her team to begin mapping out every known associate, enemy, or family member of Thomas, Melissa, and Brian from a decade ago. Anyone who had reason to harbor long-standing resentment. Meanwhile, another unsettling lead emerged. A neighbor of Brian Ellis had come forward, reporting a strange incident 3 nights before Brian's death. According to the witness, a man had been seen arguing loudly with Brian on his front porch late at night. The description was vague: average height, dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low. But it was enough to raise new questions. Security footage from nearby homes was sparse, but one grainy clip captured a partial image of a truck speeding away from Brian's street around the same time. The truck was an older model, dark-colored, possibly a Ford or a Dodge. Not much to go on, but Erica's team flagged it. Back at the station, Erica reviewed interview notes from the original Thomas Avery investigation, looking for overlooked names. One caught her attention: Amanda Keller, Melissa's former best friend. During the original inquiry, Amanda had claimed Melissa confessed, after Thomas's death, that she and Brian had planned to start over together, though she never admitted murder. At the time, Amanda's claims were dismissed as unreliable, motivated by a falling out between the women. But now, with 2 bodies lying cold and a killer on the loose, nothing could be ignored. Erica requested Amanda to come in for an interview. Amanda arrived looking guarded and worn, her face lined deeper than her years. She seemed wary but not hostile, clutching a battered leather purse like a shield. Erica approached carefully, sensing there was more beneath Amanda's surface than she had let on years ago. "Melissa never loved Thomas," Amanda said flatly after a few questions. "She loved the idea of escaping Larchwood. Brian promised her that. She thought if Thomas were out of the way, everything would be perfect." Erica leaned in. "Did Melissa ever say she was involved in his death?" Amanda hesitated, biting her lip. Not directly, but she joked about the lake, about how easy it would be. One good push when no one was looking. It wasn't a confession, but it was a crack, a widening one. Before Erica could dig deeper, Amanda added something else, her voice dropping. "I used to think they got away with it. I don't anymore. Somebody's making sure they didn't. A chill ran down Erica's spine. Outside the station, the town of Larchwood continued its quiet, unhurried life. But beneath that stillness, Erica knew something old and ugly had been disturbed, and it wasn't done yet. Detective Monroe's next move was methodical. She requested traffic cam footage from surrounding streets the night Brian was killed, hoping to catch a clearer image of the dark truck seen leaving his block. Patience paid off. A neighboring town's highway camera caught the vehicle. An old, battered navy blue Dodge Ram with a distinctive dent in the rear fender. Running the plates was slower than usual. The image was too blurry for a clean read, but Officer Devin Price managed to track down a handful of trucks, matching the description within a 50-mile radius. One name stood out: Jack Preston. Jack Preston had once dated Amanda Keller, back when Melissa and Thomas were still married. His name had never come up in the original investigation, but an old note in the Avery case file suggested he had a reputation for holding grudges, and a temper that flared easily. Erica felt the noose tighten slightly. Jack now lived alone in a rundown trailer park 2 towns over. When Erica and Devin knocked on his door, Jack answered shirtless, blinking against the sunlight. His arms were tattooed with crude, homemade ink, and the smell of old beer clung to him. "Don't know anything about no murders," he slurred when Erica mentioned Brian Ellis's name. His gaze was darting, unfocused, or pretending to be. Outside, parked haphazardly near a patch of dead grass, was a navy blue Dodge Ram, its rear fender crumpled exactly like the footage showed. Erica arranged for the truck to be impounded pending further investigation. Jack's reaction was a tell in itself: furious, loud, almost panicked. But it was what he shouted as they led him away that made Erica's skin prickle. They deserved worse than what they got. Jack was booked on obstruction charges, but Erica knew better than to assume he was the mastermind. He was reckless, impulsive. Whoever orchestrated this had been patient, precise. Back at the station, the lab confirmed something else. Jack Preston's DNA was also not a match to the sample under Melissa's fingernails. Jack might have been involved in some way, but he wasn't the one who fought Melissa during her murder. As Erica pieced together the timelines, another troubling realization surfaced. Melissa had started receiving anonymous threatening notes 6 months before her death. Notes the local police had dismissed as pranks. A few of these notes had survived in evidence. One of them read simply, "Drowning is too good for you." The handwriting was angry, jagged, almost carved into the paper. It was becoming clear. The killer didn't want just revenge. They wanted to mirror the suffering they believed Melissa and Brian had caused. Drownings, fear, violence, all designed with sick symmetry. Erica was no longer chasing a single outburst of rage. She was chasing a long, simmering vendetta. The forensic search of Jack Preston's truck yielded a partial breakthrough. Hidden under the passenger seat, investigators found a crumpled, stained jacket. On the inside of one cuff, barely visible, were smudges of dried blood. Lab analysis confirmed it matched Brian Ellis's blood type. Jack was directly involved in Brian's murder. But still, Erica knew Jack alone didn't explain the full orchestration behind the killings. His impulsive nature didn't fit the calculated, symbolic retribution being carried out. Someone had pointed Jack in a direction and let his rage loose. Jack, brought in for a second round of questioning, was volatile but cagey. Faced with the evidence, he finally cracked and admitted he'd been asked to rough Brian up, but refused to name who had asked. He owed debts. Big ones, Jack muttered, staring at the table. Somebody made sure he paid up. Debt. The word hung in the air. Erica made a note. Maybe the motive wasn't just emotional. Maybe it was financial, too. Digging deeper into Brian Ellis's life, Erica's team uncovered something unexpected. 6 months before his death, Brian had been sued for unpaid loans, shady deals tied to a construction business he tried to launch and failed. Buried in the lawsuit records was a familiar name: Warren Doyle. Warren Doyle had once been Thomas Avery's business partner. The two had co-owned a small contracting company before Melissa pressured Thomas to sell his share and move on. Doyle had resented it bitterly. Thomas's departure collapsed the business within a year, leaving Doyle bankrupt and nursing an open grudge. When Thomas died, Doyle all but disappeared from town life. Few remembered him, but now, Erica wondered, had Doyle resurfaced, quietly, patiently, to exact revenge not just for personal loss, but financial ruin. Erica requested financial records on Warren Doyle. They showed modest, erratic income, jobs under the table, small handyman gigs, but nothing substantial. However, bank surveillance flagged something curious. 2 large cash deposits made shortly after Brian Ellis's murder. Suddenly, Doyle had money, a lot of it. As Erica pieced it together, a chilling possibility emerged. Doyle might have recruited Jack Preston to intimidate or punish Brian for old debts, and in the process, reawakened his buried hatred toward Melissa as well. But if Warren Doyle was behind Jack, was he also the one who personally attacked Melissa, the DNA under her fingernails? That remained unproven. A new order went out. Find Warren Doyle. Time was running short. If Doyle had waited 10 years for revenge, Erica knew he wouldn't hesitate to vanish again. Or worse, strike at anyone else he blamed for the past. Tracking Warren Doyle wasn't easy. He had no permanent address listed, no steady job, and no obvious relatives nearby. Erica's team canvassed every bar, motel, and odd job outfit in 3 counties before catching a break. A clerk at a dilapidated motel on the outskirts of Larchwood recognized his photo. "He's in room 6, the man said, counting a crumpled wad of cash. "Paid up through the weekend." When Erica and Officer Devin Price knocked, there was no answer. Moments later, a figure bolted from the back of the motel, sprinting toward the woods. Devin gave chase while Erica circled around, cutting off Warren's escape near the tree line. Pinned and panting, Warren looked nothing like the quiet business partner from Old Town photos. Life had whittled him down to a gaunt, twitchy man with a permanent shadow under his eyes. At the station, Warren barely tried to deny his involvement. "Jack was supposed to scare him," he muttered, hands cuffed to the table. "Just scare him." When pressed, Warren insisted he hadn't ordered anyone to kill Melissa. In fact, he claimed he had nothing to do with her death at all. "I hated Brian," he said flatly. Hated him for what he did. But Melissa, she was just a means to an end. Warren admitted that after Thomas's death, he spiraled, lost his home. His marriage collapsed. He blamed Thomas for leaving the business, but he blamed Melissa for poisoning Thomas's mind. Still, when Erica mentioned the DNA found under Melissa's fingernails, Warren's confusion seemed genuine. "I didn't touch her," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't kill her." It wasn't a confession of innocence, but it wasn't the confession Erica needed either. Forensics were clear. Warren Doyle's DNA did not match the unknown sample. The real killer had fought Melissa before her death. Whoever left that DNA wasn't Warren Doyle, and almost certainly wasn't Jack Preston either. They were circling closer, but the heart of the case remained hidden. Meanwhile, a background check on Amanda Keller revealed a curious detail. After Thomas's death, she had received a sizable anonymous payment, enough to clear her debts and allow her to move to a new town. At the time, no one connected it to the case. But now, with Warren, Jack, and Amanda all tangled around Melissa and Brian's deaths, Erica couldn't ignore the possibility that Amanda had known more, and still wasn't telling everything. If Amanda had been bought off once, maybe she had been silenced again. The question now was, by whom? Because the deeper Erica dug, the more it appeared that the person who orchestrated Melissa and Brian's deaths had intimate knowledge not only of their guilt, but of the town's long-buried secrets. Someone had waited 10 years. Someone who believed they were righting a personal, cosmic wrong. And whoever it was, they were still out there. Amanda Keller arrived at the Larchwood Police Department looking nervous, her hands stuffed deep into the pockets of her jacket. She had agreed to come voluntarily, but her posture screamed reluctance. Erica Monroe started the interview quietly, showing Amanda bank records from 10 years ago, highlighting the unexplained deposit shortly after Thomas Avery's death. Amanda's face drained of color. "You said you didn't know anything back then," Erica said, keeping her voice even. "Were you protecting someone?" Amanda fidgeted. For a long time, she didn't speak. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice hoarse. "I didn't know what they were planning," she whispered. "Not at first." Amanda explained that after Melissa began her affair with Brian, she grew increasingly bold. reckless even. Melissa complained often that Thomas was weak and holding her back. Amanda thought it was just venting, until the night Melissa hinted they could solve all their problems if Thomas was out of the way. Brian, she said, had initially resisted, but Melissa had a way of pushing people, of making destruction sound like liberation. The plan, Amanda claimed, was simple. Take Thomas on a late-night boat ride, get him drunk, tip him overboard, and let nature do the rest. No witnesses, no struggle, no suspicion, but things hadn't gone exactly as planned. Thomas had fought back when he hit the water. There had been a struggle. Melissa panicked, diving into the water herself to hold him under while Brian kept the boat steady. Thomas had clawed at her arms. Amanda remembered Melissa showing her bruises the next day, laughing them off as evidence of how stubborn he was. Amanda had known enough to be afraid. Melissa promised her a cut of the insurance payout if she kept quiet. The anonymous payment Amanda received months later wasn't insurance money. It came through an intermediary, likely Brian, guilt-ridden but desperate to secure silence. Erica sat back, absorbing the confession. It fit the timeline. It explained the payment. And it explained why Amanda had remained silent even when Melissa and Brian's marriage eventually soured. But there was still one gaping hole. Who killed Melissa? Erica pressed. Was it Warren Doyle? Jack Preston? Amanda shook her head violently. No, Warren hated Brian. He barely remembered Melissa. Someone else, someone who loved Thomas. Amanda hesitated, then dropped a name that sent a ripple through Erica's entire understanding of the case. Daniel Avery, Thomas's brother. Amanda claimed Daniel had come to her 2 months before Melissa's murder. He had found out about her secret, about her knowledge. He warned her that justice was coming, that everyone who had helped cover up Thomas's death would answer for it. Amanda had thought he was bluffing. Now she wasn't so sure. It made chilling sense. Daniel had the motive. He had the personal grief. He had the patience to wait a decade. And crucially, he had the physical strength and familiarity with Melissa to be the one who left defensive wounds and DNA during a close-quarters fight. Erica's next move was clear. It was time to put Daniel Avery back under the microscope. Detective Erica Monroe knew she had to move carefully. If Daniel Avery was indeed the architect behind Melissa and Brian's deaths, he had played a patient, methodical game for 10 years. One misstep could send him into hiding, or worse, provoke more violence. Officially, Daniel had already been questioned early in the investigation, but it was clear now that much had been left unasked and unchallenged. Erica ordered a quiet surveillance team to tail Daniel while she prepared a warrant for a new DNA sample. Meanwhile, she combed through his phone records, financial activity, and public movements in the months leading up to the murders. Patterns quickly emerged. Daniel had been visiting Jack Preston's town regularly 6 months before Melissa's death. Far too many visits for someone with no friends or family there. Additionally, a small but suspicious cash withdrawal coincided almost exactly with the time Jack received his payment for roughing up Brian. Worse, Daniel's alibi for the night of Melissa's murder, that he had been drinking alone at home, remained unverifiable. It wasn't a smoking gun yet, but it was smoke thick enough to choke on. Meanwhile, Officer Devin Price, posing as a survey taker, managed to obtain a discarded coffee cup from Daniel's trash. It was a legally gray maneuver, but Erica knew they needed that DNA match before making any official move. The sample was rushed to the lab. For 48 tense hours, Erica waited. When the call finally came, the result was as explosive as she had feared. The DNA under Melissa Avery's fingernails matched Daniel Avery. It was no longer speculation. Daniel had been there, fighting Melissa as she died. Now the picture began to sharpen. Warren Doyle hated Brian and provided muscle. Jack Preston was a blunt instrument, hired and set loose. Amanda Keller had been a silenced accomplice to the original crime. But Daniel Avery was the true conductor, orchestrating a symphony of revenge. Still, one key detail gnawed at Erica: the method. Melissa had been drowned first, then beaten. Brian had been stabbed to death in his home. Daniel's rage had not been random. It was specific, tailored to each target's betrayal, almost ritualistic. It wasn't just about punishment, It was about making Melissa and Brian suffer in ways that mirrored what they had done to Thomas. Before making any arrest, Erica met with District Attorney Janice Crowell. Laying out the evidence carefully, Crowell agreed. They had enough for murder charges, but advised proceeding with caution. If Daniel realized the net was closing, he might become desperate and dangerous. A plan was set. Daniel would be brought in under the pretense of a follow-up interview. Calm, routine, nothing to alarm him. Erica prepared herself for what would come next. Confronting Daniel Avery wouldn't just be about gathering evidence. It would be a psychological chess match against a man who had proven willing to wait a decade for the perfect revenge. Daniel Avery walked into the Larchwood Police Department on a cool gray morning, looking calm, almost indifferent. Wearing a denim jacket and work boots, he gave the front desk a polite nod, as if this were nothing more than another small-town inconvenience. Detective Erica Monroe greeted him herself, masking the tension under a neutral expression. She led Daniel into interview room 2. No cuffs, no overt accusations, just an invitation to clarify a few things. A tactic designed to lower his guard. The recording device blinked silently as Erica began. At first, Daniel answered smoothly. He reiterated the same points from his initial interview. He had been home drinking alone. He barely saw Melissa anymore. He had nothing to do with Brian Ellis's death. But Erica was ready. She dropped the first piece, the financial trail, his unexplained cash withdrawals matching Jack Preston's payments. Daniel blinked, but said nothing. Then the second piece, Warren Doyle's testimony, confirming Daniel approached him months before Melissa's murder, stirring up old resentments. Still, Daniel remained composed, shrugging it off as old friends talking about the past. Finally, Erica slid a manila folder across the table. Inside, the DNA report. When she said the words, "Your DNA was found under Melissa Avery's fingernails," Daniel's composure cracked for the first time. His jaw tightened. His hands, so steady before, curled into fists. "You're mistaken," he said quietly, but the words lacked conviction. Erica pressed harder, her tone even but unrelenting. "You weren't just planning revenge. You were there. You fought her. She scratched you while you drowned her." For a long moment, Daniel stared at the table, the clock ticking loudly in the background. Then he spoke, not in defense, but with cold certainty. "She earned it," he said. "Every gasp, every claw mark." He leaned back, smiling faintly, not at Erica, but at some private memory. "Brian died fast," Daniel continued. "Melissa deserved more." Erica realized then that Daniel hadn't just wanted justice. He wanted suffering. He had tailored each death to the betrayal he believed they had committed. Melissa, the one who drowned Thomas, had to drown herself before death took her. Brian, who stood by, deserved a violent, bloody end. But Daniel wasn't finished. "There were others," he said, almost conversationally. "Others who helped cover it up. They're not innocent." Erica's pulse quickened. "Who?" Daniel smiled again. Thin, sharp, dangerous. "You'll find out." Before Erica could push further, Daniel asked for a lawyer, slamming the door on further interrogation for the day. Back in her office, Erica reviewed Daniel's final words. If he wasn't bluffing, there were more targets. More blood, he believed, needed to be spilled. And somewhere out there, those targets were still living their normal lives, unaware that Daniel Avery had marked them for death. The clock was ticking again. But this time, it wasn't about solving murders already committed. It was about preventing the next. The station air felt heavier after Daniel's interrogation. Detective Erica Monroe knew one thing with certainty. Daniel's revenge plan was bigger than they had realized. And while Daniel himself was now contained behind bars, he had allies, people he had manipulated or coerced, just like Jack Preston, who might still be free and willing to finish what he started. The first step was to go back to the beginning. Erica ordered a re-examination of all names listed in Thomas Avery's original case file. Anyone who could have been seen as obstructing justice, covering up suspicions, or aiding Melissa and Brian, whether intentionally or by negligence. The list wasn't long, but it was troubling. Amanda Keller, who had kept silent about the affair and murder plans. Sheriff Russell Dean, now retired, who had quickly ruled Thomas's death an accident despite town gossip. Laura Bennett, a neighbor who had told police she heard nothing the night of Thomas's death. despite living within shouting distance of Black Hollow Lake. Amanda was already on Erica's radar. She had come forward reluctantly, but remained deeply compromised. But Sheriff Dean and Laura Bennett, they were entirely unprotected and completely unaware. Erica immediately placed Amanda under protective custody, explaining bluntly that her life could be in danger. Amanda, pale and trembling, didn't argue. Finding Sheriff Dean was harder. After retiring 5 years ago, he had moved to a cabin in the foothills, almost off the grid. Erica and Officer Devin Price drove up the winding roads to find him. Dean, now a stooped man with a thick beard and faded flannel shirt, answered the door suspiciously. When Erica explained the situation, his face darkened. "I didn't cover anything up," he growled. "I just didn't have proof." Erica didn't argue. The point wasn't judgment now, it was protection. Dean reluctantly agreed to stay at a monitored safe house in town, grumbling but compliant. Laura Bennett, however, was a different problem. She was nowhere to be found. Neighbors said Laura had abruptly left town the day before Daniel's arrest, claiming she was going to visit family out of state. No forwarding address, no clear destination. Panic crept into Erica's mind. Had Laura somehow been tipped off? Or worse, was someone already hunting her? Meanwhile, a deeper search into Daniel's contacts revealed something even more disturbing. 2 months before the murders, Daniel had purchased a burner phone, registered under a false name, which he used to make dozens of untraceable calls. Surveillance footage from a hardware store also showed Daniel buying rope, gloves, and duct tape 3 weeks before Melissa's death. It was premeditation, pure and calculated. But if Daniel had passed instructions through the burner phone to another accomplice, someone willing to finish the list, even after Daniel's arrest, the town was facing an invisible ticking bomb. Back at the station, the team worked frantically to triangulate the burner phone's last pings. A grim pattern emerged. The night before Brian Ellis's death, the burner phone had pinged near his home. And 2 days ago, after Daniel was already in custody, it had pinged near Laura Bennett's street. Someone else was still active. Someone who hadn't been caught yet. The revenge wasn't finished. And unless Erica found the accomplice soon, another murder would strike Larchwood. Erica Monroe's gut told her that Laura Bennett was already running, but she didn't know from what or from whom. Every minute they wasted was a minute closer to bloodshed. Pulling every resource she had, Erica tracked Laura's last known phone signal to a stretch of highway west of Larchwood. Security footage from a gas station confirmed it. Laura had stopped there 2 nights ago, looking jumpy, paying cash for gas, and driving an old sedan with peeling paint. Working with Highway Patrol, Erica issued an immediate bolo, be on the lookout, for Laura's car. Meanwhile, she combed through Daniel Avery's prison communications. If he was directing the accomplice from jail, they needed proof. But the prison call logs showed nothing suspicious. Daniel hadn't made a call since his arrest. That left one chilling possibility. Daniel had set everything in motion before he was caught. The accomplice was already operating independently, following a plan Daniel had meticulously laid out. Officer Devin Price managed to triangulate the burner phone again. This time, the ping came from a town called Madison Creek, a small rural community an hour west of Larchwood, the same direction Laura was heading. Without waiting for backup, Erica and Devin jumped into the unmarked cruiser and sped toward Madison Creek, tension coiled tight between them. As they neared the town's edge, they spotted the sedan, abandoned off a dirt road, its doors open, keys dangling from the ignition. No sign of Laura. The surrounding woods loomed dark and silent. Devin spotted faint tracks, 2 sets of footprints, one fleeing, one pursuing. Erica's blood ran cold. They called for search teams immediately, fanning out into the woods. An hour later, a shout echoed across the trees. They found Laura Bennett, bloodied, bruised but alive, bound to a tree deep in the woods. Duct tape covered her mouth and panic flooded her tear-streaked face. After cutting her free, Laura gasped out fragments. "Man, dark hoodie attacked me, said I knew the truth, said I had to confess or die." He had left her tied there, but Laura was certain he had intended to return. Meanwhile, A fresh footprint trail suggested the attacker had fled once he realized law enforcement was closing in. It wasn't random violence, it was an execution delayed. At the hospital, Laura confessed the full truth to Erica. The night Thomas Avery died, she had heard shouting and a splash from Black Hollow Lake. She hadn't told the police because Melissa had begged her not to, offering hush money and threatening rumors about Laura's troubled past if she refused. Laura had convinced herself staying silent was harmless, until now. Erica realized the attack on Laura wasn't just about punishing betrayal, it was about forcing a public confession, dragging out the truth Daniel believed had been buried too long. As Erica left Laura's hospital room, her phone buzzed. A call from a motel near Madison Creek. A nervous clerk had spotted a man matching Laura's attacker's description renting a room in cash, no ID. Erica felt it in her bones. This was the accomplice, and if they didn't move fast, he might disappear, or finish Daniel's unfinished business elsewhere. The Madison Creek Motel sat crouched against the road, peeling paint and buzzing neon, giving it an almost abandoned feel. It was past midnight, and the only lights in the parking lot flickered weakly. Detective Erica Monroe coordinated quietly with local deputies. The plan was simple: contain every exit, no unnecessary noise. They had one shot at bringing the accomplice in alive. Room 12. That's where the clerk said he was staying. A man matching Laura's description, medium build, dark hoodie, cautious eyes. Erica and her team moved fast and silent, taking up positions. When the signal was given, Erica pounded on the door. "Police, open up!" For a moment, there was silence. Then, the sound of a window shattering at the back of the room. Deputies rushed around as Erica kicked open the door. The room was filthy, strewn with empty fast food bags, clothes, and a black duffel bag. Outside, Officer Devin Price tackled the fleeing man to the gravel, cuffing him with swift, brutal efficiency. He was younger than Erica expected, early 30s maybe, wiry, desperate. His hands were scraped and bleeding from the broken window, his breath coming in harsh gasps. At the station, under bright interrogation lights, the accomplice gave up faster than Erica thought he would. His name was Kyle Mercer. He wasn't a lifelong criminal, just another man broken by Daniel Avery's manipulations. Kyle had been a teenager when Thomas Avery died. His older brother, Matt Mercer, had worked with Thomas at the construction company and idolized him, until Thomas's death led to Matt's firing, drinking, and eventual suicide. Kyle had carried that bitterness for years, quietly blaming Melissa, Brian, and everyone he believed contributed to the downfall of the only person who ever looked out for him. When Daniel Avery approached him 6 months ago, spinning the story of betrayal and injustice, Kyle had listened and agreed, and Daniel had given him a list. Melissa Avery, Brian Ellis, Laura Bennett, Amanda Keller, Sheriff Russell Dean. Each name, Kyle said, was an assignment. Some were to be punished. Others were to be forced into public confessions. Daniel wanted the truth brought into the light before final punishments were delivered. Kyle had already scouted Amanda's safe house, Sheriff Dean's cabin too. He had weapons stashed, a knife, a rope, a hammer. His plan was to finish what Daniel had started. If Erica and her team hadn't caught him when they did, more blood would have been spilled within days. In Kyle's duffel bag, investigators found detailed surveillance notes, photos of Amanda's hideout, routes in and out of Dean's cabin, even schedules showing when the guards rotated. It was chilling how close Kyle had come to carrying out Daniel's final orders. As Erica prepared to file charges against Kyle for conspiracy to commit murder, assault, and attempted homicide, she allowed herself a brief exhale of relief. They had dismantled the network, but the reality remained. Daniel Avery had orchestrated an almost perfect, decade-long revenge, reaching beyond his own hands into the minds of others. The town of Larchwood would never be the same. Some wounds, Erica realized, were too old and too deep to heal cleanly. The trial of Daniel Avery opened on a rainy March morning in the county courthouse, a symbolic echo of the stormy night Thomas Avery drowned a decade earlier. The courtroom was packed with reporters, old friends, enemies, and survivors, faces both familiar and worn thin by years of quiet guilt. Amanda Keller sat flanked by security. Former Sheriff Russell Dean hunched in the back row, his face hollow. Daniel Avery entered in shackles, dressed neatly, wearing the faint smirk of a man who believed he had already won a different kind of victory. Not in the courts, but in the hearts of a town he had forced to confront its own cowardice. The prosecution laid out its case methodically, the DNA found under Melissa Avery's fingernails, the financial trails connecting Daniel to Jack Preston, testimony from Warren Doyle and Kyle Mercer tying Daniel to conspiracy and premeditated murder, Laura Bennett's and Amanda Keller's confessions about the original lies they told and the pressure they faced. Kyle Mercer, in a tightly negotiated plea deal, testified that Daniel had promised him justice, painting himself as a wronged brother seeking to cleanse the town of its sins. Kyle's testimony proved devastating. It showed Daniel wasn't acting impulsively, but coldly, systematically. The defense tried to paint Daniel as a broken man, twisted by grief and years of neglect by the justice system. But it wasn't enough. The evidence was overwhelming. After a 2-week trial, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Murder in the first degree, Melissa Avery. Conspiracy to commit murder, Brian Ellis, Laura Bennett, and others. Solicitation of violence and attempted murder through Kyle Mercer. At sentencing, Daniel finally spoke. His voice was calm, unnervingly steady. "I didn't fail Thomas," he said, looking at no one in particular. "Everyone else did." The judge sentenced Daniel Avery to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kyle Mercer received 40 years after his testimony, eligible for parole after 25. In the weeks following the trial, life in Larchwood tried, haltingly, to resume. Amanda Keller quietly moved out of town. Sheriff Dean remained in his isolated cabin, a man swallowed by regrets. Laura Bennett stayed under police protection for months before finally relocating under a new identity. Detective Erica Monroe returned to her quiet office, staring at the evidence board she had spent nearly a year building. So many names, so many connections. A town's secrets laid bare, not by a detective's determination alone, but by a brother's brutal, tragic vengeance. Erica knew the justice they achieved in court was necessary, but it came at a cost. Thomas Avery had died because people lied. Melissa Avery and Brian Ellis had died because someone couldn't forgive, and Daniel Avery would die behind bars because some wounds refused to scar over. They festered, consuming everything around them. The cycle had ended, but the damage remained. In Larchwood, the scars were stitched over by silence, but under the surface, they would never fully heal.